If Lewis Hamilton loses confidence, Ferrari loses everything. And that's exactly what just happened in Japan. Because during qualifying, while Mercedes locked the front row with a gap of over half a second, Hamilton said something on the radio that no Ferrari driver is supposed to say. Not in public. Not ever. I have no confidence in the car. And here's why that one sentence could explain the entire season. Because this isn't just about one lap. It's about a hidden problem inside the SF-26 that only appears at high speed, exactly where Mercedes is untouchable. Leclerc masked it. Hamilton exposed it. And what happens next could decide who dominates Formula One this year. Subscribe now, because the real reason behind this is not what Ferrari is telling you. What makes this even more dangerous is that at first, nobody saw it coming. Because if you only look at the timesheets, Ferrari looks competitive. Leclerc at the top in Q1. Both cars comfortably into Q3. Close enough to stay in the fight. But that's the trap. Because those numbers are hiding something much bigger. Something that only starts to appear when you zoom in corner by corner, lap by lap, and especially sector by sector. Here's where things get serious. Suzuka is not just any circuit. It's one of the most demanding tracks on the calendar. High speed, long, flowing corners. No room for hesitation. No margin for doubt. And that matters more than anywhere else. Because this is where confidence becomes performance. Or the lack of it becomes exposed. During free practice, Ferrari engineers already noticed a pattern. Not a failure. Not a clear issue. But something inconsistent. The tires were overheating faster than expected. Especially through the fastest sections of the track. And when that happens, everything else starts to break down. Grip disappears. Balance shifts. And the car stops talking to the driver. And that's the key. Because Formula One drivers don't just drive. They listen. They feel. They react to every tiny signal the car gives them. And when those signals become unclear, the driver hesitates, even if it's just for a fraction of a second. And at this level, that fraction is everything. Now here's the detail most people completely missed. The second half of Suzuka was resurfaced. Brand new asphalt. Smoother. Cleaner. But also more unpredictable. Less rubber. Narrower operating window for the tires. Which means one thing. If you fall outside that window even slightly, you lose performance instantly. Ferrari knew this. They tried to adapt. But the SF-26 doesn't respond well to that kind of surface. It becomes nervous, unstable, hard to read. And that's exactly the kind of car Hamilton struggles with. Not because of skill, but because of style. He needs feedback, consistency, a car that tells him exactly what it's doing. Leclerc doesn't. He improvises. He extracts performance even when the car isn't perfect. And that difference started to show immediately. In Q1, it's already there. Leclerc goes fastest, sets the benchmark, controls the session. Hamilton, meanwhile, is almost 4/10 slower. That's not small. That's not normal. That's a signal. And it gets even more interesting. Because as qualifying progresses, Hamilton gets closer, not further away, which sounds positive, but actually reveals something deeper. He's not immediately comfortable. He needs laps. He needs time. He needs to build confidence step by step. And in qualifying, you don't have that luxury. You have one shot, maybe two, and that's it. So by the time he finally starts to understand the car, the opportunity is already gone. And this creates a hidden disadvantage, not visible on paper, but devastating in reality. Because while Hamilton is still figuring things out, Mercedes is already extracting everything. From the very first lap. No hesitation. No adaptation phase. Just pure execution. And this is where the gap really comes from. Not just speed, but readiness, precision, confidence from the first corner. And that's something Ferrari simply doesn't have right now. But this is only the surface of the problem. Because what happens next is where everything connects. And where Ferrari's biggest weakness becomes impossible to ignore. And this is where the story stops being about drivers and starts being about a structural problem Ferrari cannot hide anymore. Because what happened in Q3 was not a coincidence. It was a pattern. The same pattern seen in every session before. Strong start, competitive pace, then suddenly the drop. And here's the detail that changes everything. It always happens in the same place. High-speed sections. The exact zones where races are won or completely lost. This is not about cornering. Ferrari is actually strong there. In some cases, even better than Mercedes. But the moment the car reaches maximum speed, something breaks in the equation. Energy deployment fades. Power delivery becomes inconsistent. And the car slows down when it should be at its strongest. That's not a driver issue. That's not setup. That's a limitation, a built-in ceiling. And Suzuka exposed it perfectly, because this track punishes any weakness at high speed more than almost any other circuit. You can hide problems in slower tracks. You can compensate with strategy. You can even mask it with a perfect lap. But here, there's nowhere to hide. And Ferrari couldn't hide it. Not with Leclerc. Not with Hamilton. Both cars hit the same wall. Different styles. Different approaches. Same result. And that tells you everything. Because when two completely different drivers reach the exact same limitation, the problem is not them. It's the car. Now here's where it becomes even more serious. Because this isn't just costing them pole position. It's costing them time every single lap. Race pace, consistency, tire life. Everything is connected to this. According to race data trends, Ferrari is losing around 7/10 per lap compared to Mercedes in long runs. 7/10. Every lap. That's not a gap. That's a different category. And it gets worse. Because the longer the stint goes, the bigger the gap becomes. Tires degrade faster. Energy recovery becomes less efficient. And the car becomes even harder to drive. Which brings us back to Hamilton. Because now his radio message makes perfect sense. No confidence in the car. He wasn't reacting to one moment. He was feeling the entire picture. A car that changes behavior. A car that loses performance unpredictably. A car that doesn't give clear feedback when pushed to the limit. And at this level, that's unacceptable. Not for a rookie. Not for a midfield team. And definitely not for Ferrari. But here's the twist. Because while all of this is happening, Mercedes is doing the exact opposite. Lewis Hamilton just said something that Ferrari cannot hide anymore. And it happened right in the middle of Japanese Grand Prix qualifying. Not after the race. Not in an interview. In the car. At full speed. I have no confidence in the car. 9 words. That's all it took to expose a problem Ferrari has been trying to control since the start of the season. Because while Mercedes locked the front row with over half a second advantage, Ferrari looked competitive on paper, but completely unstable underneath. Leclerc masked it. Hamilton revealed it. And here's the part that changes everything. This isn't just about one bad session. This is about a hidden weakness in the SF-26 that only appears at high speed, exactly where championships are decided. If Ferrari can't fix this, they're not fighting for wins. They're fighting to understand their own car. Subscribe now, because what Hamilton really uncovered goes far deeper than anyone expected. What makes this even more uncomfortable for Ferrari is how normal everything looked at first. Because if you only watch the results, you'd think nothing was wrong. Both cars in Q3. Leclerc starting near the front. Hamilton still in the mix. No crash. No failure. No obvious issue. But that's exactly why this is dangerous. Because the real problem isn't visible on the surface. It's hidden inside the way the car behaves. And Suzuka is the worst place to hide anything. Because this track exposes everything. High-speed corners. Long flowing sections. No room to hesitate. No time to correct mistakes. You either trust the car, or you lose time instantly. And this is where the first cracks started to appear. During practice, Ferrari already noticed something unusual. Not a dramatic issue. Something subtle, but consistent. The tires were overheating faster than expected, especially through the fastest parts of the track. Spoon, 130R, the final chicane. And that changes everything. Because when tires overheat, they stop giving feedback. Grip becomes unpredictable. The rear starts to move. The front stops responding cleanly. And suddenly, the driver is no longer in control. He's reacting, guessing, managing, instead of attacking. Now here's where it gets even more critical. The second half of Suzuka was resurfaced. Brand new asphalt, smoother, cleaner, but also much less forgiving. Less rubber on track, less natural grip, and a much narrower window where the tires actually work. Which means if the car is even slightly out of balance, you fall out of that window immediately. And when that happens, confidence disappears. And that's exactly what Hamilton was feeling. Not a lack of speed, a lack of trust, because the car wasn't giving him clear signals. Corner after corner, lap after lap. And here's the key detail most people missed. Leclerc didn't have the same problem, at least not in the same way. He adapted faster. He pushed earlier. He extracted performance even when the car wasn't perfect. And that difference started to show immediately. In Q1, Leclerc goes fastest, controls the session, looks completely at ease. Hamilton, meanwhile, almost 4/10 slower. That gap is not just performance, that's confidence. And as the session progresses, something interesting happens. Hamilton gets closer, little by little, lap after lap. The gap shrinks, which sounds positive, but actually reveals the real issue. He needs time to understand the car. He needs laps to build trust. And in qualifying, that's a luxury you don't have. Because by the time he starts to feel comfortable, the session is already over. And that creates a hidden disadvantage. Not visible in the final result, but decisive in performance. Because while Hamilton is still adapting, Mercedes is already extracting everything from the very first lap. No hesitation, no uncertainty, just execution. And this is where the gap really begins. Not in raw speed, but in confidence. Confidence that allows you to push immediately. Confidence that turns a good car into a dominant one. And Ferrari right now doesn't have that. But this is only the beginning. Because what happens next in qualifying is where the real problem becomes impossible to ignore. And this is where everything breaks. Because Q3 doesn't just decide the grid. It exposes the truth. No excuses. No traffic. No second chances. Just one lap where the car shows exactly what it really is. Leclerc starts his lap. And for a moment, it looks incredible. First sector, fastest of anyone. Cleaner lines. More commitment. More speed. You can feel it. This could be the lap. This could be the moment Ferrari finally challenges. But then, it begins. Sector 2. The car starts to lose time. Not dramatically, but enough to feel it slipping away. And by the time he reaches the final sector, it's gone. The speed disappears. The advantage fades. And he crosses the line. Fourth. Again. Not bad, but not enough. Now watch Hamilton, because his lap tells an even more revealing story. He starts even stronger. Purple sectors early on. Faster than everyone at that point. For a brief second, it looks like he might break into the top 3. Maybe even challenge. But then, the exact same thing happens. The car just drops. No warning. No clear mistake. Just a loss of performance exactly where it matters most. And he finishes 6th. And that repetition is everything. Because this is no longer about one driver or one lap. This is a pattern. Both cars. Same behavior. Same sections of the track. Same result. And that tells you something Ferrari cannot deny. They are hitting a limit. A hard limit. Built into the car. And Suzuka exposed it perfectly. Because this circuit amplifies one specific weakness. High-speed performance. This is where the gap to Mercedes becomes impossible to hide. Not in slow corners. Not in medium-speed sections. Ferrari is competitive there. Sometimes even better. But the moment the car reaches maximum load, maximum speed, the problem appears. Energy deployment drops earlier than expected. Power fades. The car feels lighter, but slower. And the driver cannot do anything about it. That's the key. This is not correctable mid-lap. It's not something you fix with driving. It's a limitation you carry through the entire lap. And according to the qualifying data, that's exactly where Ferrari loses most of the time compared to Mercedes, especially in the final sector, where top speed and energy deployment decide everything. Now think about what that means. Even if the first part of the lap is perfect, even if the driver extracts everything, the result is already capped. There is a ceiling, and both drivers hit it. Every time. Now connect this back to Hamilton, because this is where his message becomes even more powerful. I have no confidence in the car. He wasn't talking about balance or setup. He was talking about unpredictability. A car that feels strong until suddenly it doesn't.